Call the Planning Commission meeting to order, please. Bob, is there any change to the agenda?
Yes, you have a revised agenda at your desk.
Okay. So everybody looked at the revised agenda, and is there a motion to approve? Seeing none, we'll go home.
We're looking. We're still
Will we approve the revised agenda?
Motion second to approve the adopt the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Council members in the audience, would like to speak now, or?
Oh, I'll wait till my... Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other council members in the audience? Bob, items to be deferred or withdrawn?
Yes, there are a few items to be deferred, starting with item 1A. This is case 2015 CP-011-003. This is a request to amend the South Nashville Community Plan for properties located at 1131 and 1137 4th Avenue South. Staff recommendation is to defer to the December 10th Planning Commission meeting. Next item is the associated zone change that goes with that. It's item 1B, case 2015 SP-092-001. This is a request to rezone from IR to SP zoning for properties located at 1131 and 1137 4th Avenue South to permit a mixed-use development. Staff recommendation is to defer to the December 10th Planning Commission meeting. And the next item on the deferral list is item number 2, case 2015 SP-102-001. This is a request to rezone from R8 to SP zoning for property located at 647 James Avenue to permit up to 8 residential units, and the staff recommendation is to defer indefinitely.
Okay, thank you, Bob. The items that you've heard, commissioners, to be deferred, it's item 1 and 2 deferred until December the 10th. Item number 2 deferred indefinitely. There's a motion to defer those.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those now have been deferred. And if you'd be kind enough to tell us items on consent, Bob.
Before I get to the consent agenda, as information for our audience, if you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Planning Commission today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of entry of the Planning Commission's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact independent legal counsel. And as noticed to the public, items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. So as I read these items into the record, please raise your hand if you would like it removed from the consent agenda. Starting with item number 5 on page 5 of your agenda, case 2012 NL-002-003. This is a request for approval of a neighborhood landmark development plan for property located at 608 Shelby Avenue to permit residential, office, and retail uses. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. Next item on the consent is item 6, case 2015 S-166-001. This is a request for concept plan approval to create 24 lots on properties located at 4801 Payne Road and Payne Road unnumbered. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. Next item is item 7. This is case 2015 S-151-001. This is a request for final plat approval to create one lot on part of property located at 3120 Blue Water Way and Moss Landing Drive, unnumbered. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. And the next item on the consent agenda is item 8. case 2015S-160A-001. This is a request to amend the recorded front setbacks from 110 feet and 90 feet to 80 feet for properties located at 116 and 120 Cheekwood Terrace. Staff recommendation is to approve. And item 9, under other business, new employee contract for Jessica Buechler and contract amendments for Jason Swaggart and Lisa Milligan. And staff recommends approval of those. And then item 13 is to accept the director's report and approve administrative items.
Thank you, Bob. Items to be considered on consent is item 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 13. There's a motion to accept those on consent.
Second?
Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Those have now been taken care of by consent. The two items that will be on the public hearing today, item 3 and item 4. The other items have been taken care of.
Okay, item 3 is a request to rezone property located off Clarksville Pike. Request is to rezone approximately 9.2 acres from two-family residential to multifamily residential. The properties are outlined in red. This is several different properties. It's also abandoned, or not abandoned, unbuilt right-of-way along the properties. Properties are vacant and consist of densely wooded areas. There are some steep slopes along the backside or the northwest corner. Staff is recommending disapproval. Sorry, no space. Okay, the existing zoning, again, is two-family residential R10 that would permit a maximum of 50 units. Proposed zoning is multifamily residential alternative and permit a maximum of 184 units. The alternative district requires that units be closer to the street, as well as front door entrances, and that parking be at the back of the buildings. This is in the Bordeaux Whites Creek Community Plan. Policy is conservation, which recognizes some of the steep slopes along the rear property line, and the suburban neighborhood evolving policy. This policy supports all types of residential. It is a residential-only policy. It would support multifamily as proposed with this zoning. Given the constraints on this property and its location, as you see, it only has access currently through a single-family residential neighborhood, and to permit 200-something units to have sole access onto those streets is not appropriate. An SP zoning could be considered at this location that would address access, also transitioning to the properties to the east, as well as buffering for the properties to the east. Staff is recommending disapproval as we need more details to address these issues that we have, which could possibly come through an SP zoning.
This item is open for public hearing. The applicant will be allowed 10 minutes and hold 2 minutes of that back for rebuttal if you like.
You want the applicant first?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, the applicant would come make their presentation. You'd be allowed 10 minutes. You can keep 2 of that back for rebuttal.
I think they want to speak in favor of it, but we can give them.
They'll have their opportunity to make your presentation first.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. My name is Mike Hedges. This is Mike Guthrie. His mother-in-law owns the property. She is here. She is the applicant. I would just, as I understand it from our communications with staff, we apparently failed to communicate because the primary objection and their response was that they wanted access to Clarksville Pike. We never intended to build it any other way. Mike, if you want to, here, I'll get one in.
I'll pass these out.
Okay.
Just give it over to the staff and they'll pass it out. Go ahead with your presentation.
As you can see from this, our intent was to have access to Clarksville Pike. We didn't request any rezoning because the lots down there are already commercial. I am proposing to develop this for tax credit housing, affordable housing. I think the need is great. I think the people that are here are going to speak to that need. And where we are on this is the application cycle. I know this isn't your fault, but the application cycle is coming up in February, and we have to have properly zoned land when we make an application. I would like to We'd love to answer any questions. The only other things I would like to point out, I'm going to give them one at each end of the table, if you would, to just pass it down. I didn't bring enough copies. I wanted to show you that this is not our first rodeo in tax credit development. We've been doing it a long time. I also want to show you a couple of pictures of the type of stuff we build. Our architect is here. He's been drawing on my plans for 20 years. He can tell you we build good stuff. One of the pictures you see there is the cover page, however, of the Mississippi Home Corporation. That's the Mississippi equivalent to THDA. That's their annual qualified allocation plan. They chose our apartments for the cover of their plan, which we were tickled to death with. The other picture that shows a long row of apartments is the style that we would propose to build here. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioners have any questions? I have one of staff. What are the items that would have you recommended disapproval, but what are the items that they would have needed to have met for approval for this to be on consent?
Well, to keep in mind that they're asking for an RM20A zoning district, so while they have presented this plan, it's not anything that staff has reviewed. It's not anything that is being considered tonight. They're asking for RM20A, and that's what's in front of you today.
Okay.
I would add, I learned a little bit a while ago because I heard you pass something with conditions. We would be happy with conditions that would require that our entrance was on Clarksville Pike and that we not build 200 and we couldn't possibly build over about I would plan to build maybe 72 to 90 units. The most we could possibly build is 120 something. I'd be happy to constrain it at that if that would be more palatable.
And Chairman, another thing to your question is that the access was the major issue with the RM20A. And I do want to clarify that I misspoke at the end of my presentation. I said 200 something units. It was 184. That's maximum for that zoning district.
How many?
184.
And what are they asking for?
It's the RM20A district.
We'd be happy with 100 or 100. We'd like between 100 and 120 because we're not sure exactly how many we can build right now.
And I understand the deadline of getting the application in, and I'll try to work this out tonight if we can. Jason, if they agree to the access on Clarksville Pike and to an SP, we're not going to approve. We can't approve tonight as an SP because we don't have the specifics. But if they agree to that, and the buffers along the east side, are those the three major holdbacks?
Again, its access was for this zoning, but I mean, there's no way to guarantee access at this point. If it's rezoned to RM20A, that issue will be out there. There's no way for us to require them to access Clarksville Pike with just a straight rezoning. I mean, we're not considering an SP. We've just seen this plan, so it's not anything that we haven't commented on it. I mean, there may be issues that we find with this plan, so I really can't speak to that plan since we're not.
So you're saying we can't prove this, there's no way to work it out tonight, so we probably should defer it then one meeting, let them come back then the first meeting in December. And I don't know what that does to your zoning.
It'll miss all the dates.
Yeah, as I understand it, that'll kill it, but I understand that.
I'm not sure we can get an SP reviewed in that amount of time, since we would have to distribute those plans to all the other agencies. I mean, one thing that you might be able to consider, we don't do this frequently, but if there's a real safety issue with traffic coming through the neighborhood, there have been times where you can recommend a condition be added with a straight rezoning to limit access to Clarksville Pike only.
That would be fine.
That might be something that is possible in this case if that can be added to the council bill as a condition.
And you could also add a condition that we don't do 180, whatever it was, units. I mean, we're happy with that, too.
I don't know if that's something, I don't know if that'd be something we'd have to talk a little bit more about, but
I don't know how we would justify
yeah.
that limitation, but
I mean, the condition that it has to access Clarksville Pike direct would be fine.
Is this, we're working this out, we just need to, I think if we can't work it out, we need to defer it, let's not turn it down. Come back in.
well, I think that Bob's suggestion in regards to articulating very clearly about why it's for this many units, from a safety standpoint, that allowing access only to Clarksville Pike, you could make a motion that and include that in there if you articulate why that's a safety condition, allowing this many units to exit into the neighborhood. But it is not a usual thing to put a condition on a base rezoning. To just instead of an SP or something, where we're able to put design regulations in there. But I think you could, if you articulate it from a safety standpoint, that it shouldn't exit into the neighborhood. You could do that.
But that wouldn't address the other concerns, right? With buffering and the other.
Right. We can't get into anything as far as conditions regarding other design issues that might come up, which we would normally do with an SP. Or I don't think it would be appropriate for us to also, because at some point you're just creating a new zoning district.
Right.
So.
Stuart?
I realize we have probably other people who want to speak too out here, but obviously, we rely a lot more than many places do on SPs. I get that, and this may be a little unusual for these folks. We also don't like the idea probably of we don't see a whole lot of affordable housing possibilities for approval. So I can see why we would want to be thinking about this. So this is this is a government issue, government funding decision-making issue coming down very quickly.
The way it works, Commissioners, every year THDA solicits applications, and it's extremely competitive. As you can see from my list, we've been successful in recent years getting awards, but part of the application process is I started to say your zoning must be in place. To be perfectly accurate, if your zoning is not in place at the time of the application, you lose 5 points in the competitive process. With the loss of 5 points, it's absolutely impossible. With the loss of 1 point, it's impossible to get an award.
Which takes away my thoughts that it would be something that could be referred back to us as it goes through the council process, because you would already be dead from the way the THDA process works. I hate the idea, well, we're not through with our public hearing yet.
Right.
Would y'all like to hear from other people in the audience first?
Yeah, no, we'll have to.
Yeah, we have to go that way.
Okay, well, there's other people's input, but
Thank you very much.
2 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have other questions from commissioners. So, others in the audience wish to speak in support.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan Lane. I live at 3912 Grace Branch Road, which is probably half a mile to a mile from this site. I own and operate ADL Realtor Services, which is located at 3407 Clarksville Highway, which is maybe 3 or 4 blocks from the entrance of this site. I've been operating my real estate business out in that area since 1997. And it's my opinion that Bordeaux is one of the last areas in the city that has few multifamily housing than any other area in the city. If you look at it and compare it, it's my opinion that we probably stand somewhere around 80-20, or it may even be 85-15 when you look at single-family home versus multifamily home. If you look at most other areas in the city, they're more closest to 60-40 type distribution. Many of my neighbors and things probably will beat me up because I'm here, but one of the things, if you do survey that area, when the first thing they say they want out there is, we want a sit-down restaurant. And I keep telling them, until you get the population density up, they won't come, because I've tried and so forth. We need multifamily housing out there. I'm familiar with the tax credit program. They do a good job. They have them in Metro Center throughout the city. Many people see tax credit property and they don't even realize that they are tax credit property. I think with them having to bring the side-in access and ingress and egress off of Clarksville Highway, and to my opinion, is a good site for multifamily housing, and we need it out there in that area.
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak in support?
Hello, my name is Taurus McCain. I'm an infill developer. I actually live in that area as well. I actually grew up in that area, and I'm a little taken back by the progress and prosperity I've seen in other parts of the city, and it not changing in our area because they've been so opposed to higher density. Just knowing how much higher density, the need for higher density to have a healthy community, so that's why I'm in support of the low-income housing possible project there. Also, I saw how the community reacted to another Hallmark did a project behind Kroger's that was a low-income tax property, and I've gone by there several times, and it's top-notch. It's ran very well, and I haven't heard anybody complain about it, so I'm in support of, I'm definitely in support of the project. And also, we had at the Bordeaux Business Coalition, Matt Wilshire from the Economic Development Department of the Mayor's Office spoke and said one of the things that drives economic development is head counts, and he had referenced the investment that the city's made in Antioch because of the population growth, and we haven't had that growth because they've been so opposed to affordable housing, the higher density housing. I just wish you all would consider approving this. Thanks.
Others wishing to speak in support? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Hello, I'm Michelle Mogadam. I'm speaking for my father, Hassan Mogadam. He owns property located at 3800 Clarksville Highway. And I do apologize, I'm coming in on this kind of late, so I'm kind of catching up to speed. We oppose this simply because of the same reasons that you do. Also, all the properties adjacent to Clarksville Highway where this egress that they're asking for in this entryway, they're all zoned commercial. The commercial area is not such that it would be inviting for it to be the main access to a new residential development, in my opinion. Also, we don't know what it would do to the value of his property. He's concerned about that. That I would agree with everything that everyone has said here. Bordeaux is in need of the type of residential community that they're proposing. I just don't know that this is the right location. We simply want to be here today to make it known that we do oppose this, and to also speak on the record that, which I'm sure you may be aware, we don't know how that this is going to affect his property, but there's some kind of zoning or highway or let me see what it's going on. They're going to do some kind of proposed right-of-way and easements from Ashland City Highway to Brawley Parkway. And they're going to come out and start looking at the property, and that's going on between now and the next 18 months. So I don't know how that's going to affect this proposal. And we just want it to be on the record that we have an opposition to this at this time.
Thank you. Thank you. Others in opposition?
Hi, I'm Patrick O'Neill, and I live at 3320 Curtis Street, which is kind of right here. And I went to, the other day I walked around and I asked a bunch of my neighbors in that whole area there. I didn't ask them all, I ran out of time, but I asked about 15 people, and none of them were for this idea at all. And one of the big issues we all came up with is Courtney, their only access, right here, there's a really, this is an S, that's an S turn right there. So if your only access is right here, you definitely are going to have an issue with that corner right there. And I'm personally not really against any development there, but I just think it's a little bit too much development for that spot right there, because if you don't have any access anywhere else. A lot of my neighbors they were out, like, just don't change it all. They're okay if we just have R10, but we were concerned about having a high density population right there. And of course, there was, concern about the values of the properties, crime, is it going to bring more crime to the neighborhood, the traffic, and even Curtis Street itself. If you would go right now, if you drive down Curtis Street, if there's a car parked on Curtis Street, I think I'm talking the wrong one. You have to wait for one car to go past before another one can pass. So if you're going to have this much traffic going down Curtis or Courtney, for one, you have the S-turn, which is pretty dangerous to begin with, and then Curtis Street, if a lot of people are trying not to get onto Clarksville Highway, but to get onto Trinity through Curtis, you're still going to have an issue there too, because it's not your normal wide road. So again, if you don't have any access to Clarksville Highway from the other way, I think it would cause some issue.
Thank you. Any others wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, you'll be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, sir. With regard to the first lady that spoke, I think she made the comment that the other property along here on the highway is zoned commercial. I want to point out the remaining property on the highway that belongs to the applicant is also zoned commercial. And he looks at this as a way to, as a stimulus to improve that commercial property he has, because it would certainly put more demand on that commercial property. So I would just point out that we don't need anything rezoned other than what we've shown. The other property on the highway is commercial. It would stay commercial. That would make the most sense. With regard to the second, or to the gentleman that spoke, I would just reiterate that we will have zero impact on the streets that he was referencing back there, because we would have zero ingress and egress to that area. All our ingress and egress would be to Clarksville Pike, and we'd be happy to stipulate that in whatever manner you like. We could, I started to say pinky swear, but I won't say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I declare the public hearing closed. Rick, I'm going to start with you. I've had
Yeah, think of it.
call on you. Yeah.
Thank you. I guess I have a question. It seems like the biggest issues are the access to Clarksville Pike, and we don't necessarily have a way to guarantee that. So if somebody can reiterate how we guarantee that, that would be helpful.
Well, I think given the testimony that you've heard now from the community and their concerns about safety, and if this commission shares those concerns about having the access point on the Clarksville Pike instead of into the existing neighborhood, then I think you could rely on that to say that if you so chose to approve the application for the straight rezone, but given the safety concerns about how you would access this multifamily that are required to be on Clarksville Pike, I think that the testimony today would support that.
And we can request that, or we can require that?
Yes.
Okay. And my second question is, I mean, it seems like part of this appeal is its connection to providing more affordable housing, which is on everybody's mind these days. My understanding is that the low-income housing tax credit 9% fund is becoming harder and harder to get, and that the whole disparate impact piece of that can lose you points depending on what areas you're in. Are y'all, and so my question would be, if we speed this through because we want to make sure that application happens and then they don't get the money, does that impact our decision? Or can we put a contingency on coming back if that money is not awarded?
No, I don't think you can make this contingent upon them receiving the federal funds.
Okay.
No.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to that?
Commissioner's got a question.
Unless the legal counsel has.
No, I don't have anything different to say from what Secretary Sloan said. I would agree that if the commission feels inclined to approve this with that condition that they access via Clarksville Pike because of a specific safety issue, that would be okay. I also would agree that you can't approve it contingent upon their approval of the application. It would have to be a straight approval or a straight disapproval.
Okay.
There may be another, we were talking about the timing, and I don't know exactly if they can, there's no bill right now, and so if a bill were filed for the February public hearing, that would be second reading in early February, and then 2 weeks later would be third reading. I guess it's possible that it could be, they could start working on the SP and submitting that to us for review, and it could be re-referred back from council so that it has been reviewed by all the agencies by February, so that's maybe another option that could be considered so that they can stay on track. I can't guarantee that they'll stay on track for their February deadline, but that if you take action today and a bill is filed as a straight rezoning and then it's amended at council to an SP and re-referred back to the commission, then that's another option that could be considered.
Anything else, Rick? Stuart?
Well, that timing issue is what I was thinking about earlier. I'm not sure that this is something we would normally consider approving as a straight rezoning without the timing issue, and I'm not sure the timing issue is something we can really be bound by. It's not really our fault that we're at the deadline. This money may not, the tax-related money may go somewhere else, I don't know, but it will go for the same sort of thing. I'm inclined to think we would be on better ground following our staff's suggestion, that last suggestion, that we go ahead and act on it and disapprove, but with the understanding that it can be re-referred. I don't know if the timing works for them or not, but I'd be happy to hear it again. I didn't realize no bill had been filed.
It's not filed yet.
Well, in that case, that's the way I would be leaning at this point.
Greg?
I guess I also had a question. I mean, I think that the developer is willing to go down to about 100, 120 units, but under a straight zoning, I guess the question to the staff would be, if we did a straight zoning, would it allow for 180 units into the future?
That's the maximum under the zoning. So you always got to keep in mind there's other requirements, stormwater, parking, height, bulk standards. So you can't go over that, but more than likely you wouldn't get that.
Gotcha. That's all I got.
So I echo pretty much everything that Commissioner Stewart said. I just don't see this being anything but an SP. It seems like we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole simply because of timing, and it's just not. It's not there. There are issues in addition to the access issue. There are the buffering issues, and to status point, if this was done as an SP and they reviewed it, there could be other issues that would arise. So it just doesn't seem right now that it'd be something that it's even possible for me to approve, even with a condition on the base zoning that access be granted to Clarksville Pike.
Jeff?
I agree with Lily, and I think the other thing we need to study relative to access to Clarksville Pike is the potential need for a traffic light at that exit, and to understand from Public Works the impact of all the additional traffic on the road.
Okay. Other comments? Is there a motion?
Move we approve staff recommendation to disapprove with the understanding that it may well be referred if the timing is such that they can see their way clear to do that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second to go with staff recommendations to disapprove. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you for your time.
We're ready for item number 4.
Okay, item number 4. This is a request to apply a contextual overlay to property located within Old Hickory Village. Staff recommendation is to approve the requested overlay. The property is located in Old Hickory Village and is the 138 acres is included in the request. The property is currently zoned R10, which is residential 1 and 2 family, as well as R6, which is residential 1 and 2 family. The community character manual policy for the area includes a small area of conservation, a small area of open space, but the majority of the property is T4 urban neighborhood maintenance policy area. The contextual overlay was established by BL 2014-771. The design standards are identified in this bill and cannot be modified for individual overlay areas. The contextual overlay, the base zoning remains the same. The overlay applies appropriate design standards necessary to maintain and reinforce the established form or character of residential development in a particular area. There are standards included in the contextual overlay for setback, which compares it to the 2 properties on either side of the proposed new construction. For height, which also compares it to the 2 properties on either side. Coverage as well. There are also standards for access, garages, and parking that apply. Because the application of a contextual overlay is consistent with the neighborhood maintenance policy, staff recommends approval.
Thank you. This item's open for public hearing, and I believe, Councilman, you're the applicant, so we'll hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak. Thank you all for allowing me to be here today. Councilman Allen. When I got on the council last year and took over Dean Jernigan's position, I started looking at the east and west Nashville and the developments that were going on in that area. My wife used to live in the 1500 block of Fatherland, so I still frequent that area some along with West Nashville. And I saw what was happening to the context of those neighborhoods and what was going on. I looked at the village area and I said, well, to protect the history of that area back there that was built by DuPont Company back in the early 1900s, as y'all well know, I started seeing a couple of people starting to come in there and build these types of houses, the two houses, tall, skinny houses. It was starting to happen in this area. And I said, well, there's three things I can do. I can either downzone this area, or I can try to put a historical overlay in there. And then I started looking at this contextual overlay. When I looked at the contextual overlay, I said, this is probably the least restrictive way that we can manage the development in this area when developers want to come in and put the type of housing that we're seeing in East and West Nashville, and that's where contextual overlays have been placed at this time. I had a community meeting about this, and I had Ms. Milligan show up for that meeting, had about 45, 50 residents show up. The majority of those people were in favor of this contextual overlay. Now, since then, we've had several emails. I know Ms. Milligan's gotten calls, planning's gotten calls. The majority of people, once we explain how this contextual overlay works, they've been fairly satisfied. Is it perfect? No. But at the same time, it allows for orderly development of this area and keeping the neighborhood in context with the charm, the ambiance of the Old Hickory Village. And that's why I'm doing this. I'm being proactive to be ahead of these developers that are going to come in and do the kind of things that we're doing in East and West Nashville. That's why I'm asking for passage of this.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak in support? Anyone wish to speak in opposition?
Good evening. My name is John Phillips. I live at 1113 Marion Avenue. I'm a property owner, landlord in this area. I'm fairly shocked that nobody else from that area is here today. The overlay district, in my opinion, and someone else can speak to this, I think is almost at least half rental units at this point, and a lot of those lots are very small. I don't even think they qualify for the R6 that is even in place now. If you speak to East Nashville development, apparently there's a reason this area still hasn't been developed. I mean, if there was money to be made and if there was a reason to come out to Old Hickory and build, people would have done it. So adding further restrictions to an area that has already been severely hit. I mean, I've owned properties in East Nashville, North Nashville, and in the village since the mid-2000s. So, 8, 9, 10 years. Old Hickory is the only place, well, the first place to go down when the recession hit, and the last place to come back when all the rest of the development in Nashville's been coming back up. Our prices are just finally starting to come back. I renovated a house and sold it last year, one that I'd had since 07 or 08. So this area, I mean, if we're trying to boost Nashville and we're trying to increase density, I don't know that that's actually ever going to happen out there. Like I said, a lot of the lots are small. The preservation, as you said, DuPont went out there, and I don't know what restrictions or development they had in place at that time, but I'm sure they just kind of did what they wanted. They had the big checkbook. They built that entire town. Most of those houses are 800 feet, 1,000 feet on little tiny lots. You can't build a garage. I'm not really sure what we're trying to protect or overlay. It's going to kill what little development or turnaround that is finally happening in Old Hickory. I just don't believe that it's a good idea. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? 2 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like.
Just real quick, and some people don't understand it, and I think that's what I've explained to people about the additions. I think that's the biggest thing people look at. And I've already told them for the additions, they can take the average of the houses around them, they can add on up to 50% of the average around them. So if they've got 1,200 square feet, house on either side is 1,200 square feet, they can add on up to 600 square feet. Is that correct? There is a way that they can do the additions. I think that was the biggest concern that I got from a lot of the people, was that. The thing about the west side of Hadley Boulevard, back when DuPont did this, the west side of Hadley was more of what they called the blue collar workers back then, and then the east side of Hadley was what we called the supervisor and managerial people when they built this development. So the thing is, what's going on now, especially on the west side, I'm seeing them tear down some of those houses and build the two tall, skinny houses that are totally out of context with the neighborhood. And that's what I've tried to explain to everybody. I said, I've tried to explain to you that keeps the neighborhood in context. Those houses, especially on the west side of the house, which are the old Haskell styles and the different styles that DuPont built, a lot of those are already on the historical register right now. It's not a historical overlay. I've explained that to them as well. So what this does is just help protect that area. I've told people as well, you know, you can always come back later on if we decide to take some of the overlay off certain blocks, we can do that. But at this point in time, with the way growth is going on in this town, this was the best option I could see to protect this area, and it is growing right now. People are coming in there, and I know on the west side of Hadley, they're paying close to $200 a square foot for some of those historical houses. So this was my idea of being proactive for this neighborhood, protect the integrity and the ambiance of that area.
Okay, thank you. I declare the public hearing closed. I'll start with Jeff.
No comments.
William.
I have a question for staff. The councilman mentioned if it was determined later that the contextual overlay would be inappropriate for certain parcels, it could be taken off. What's the process for doing that?
Well, the way that the contextual overlay works in regards to application is it does have to include a complete block. And so you couldn't remove parcel by parcel. That just wouldn't be possible. It would be a rezoning again to remove, but it would have to remove an entire block face.
Greg. Stuart?
I'm familiar with the area, and when I first read this, I thought this was probably the best kind of example of why we need this tool. I mean, I think we can talk a lot about density, but I think we're kind of have a long history of believing that density doesn't need to override character of established neighborhoods, especially when they're already pretty dense. So to me, this is a perfect example of why we created the contextual overlay tool, and I agree with the councilman's explanation of why it would help. Thanks.
Berkeley?
A couple of questions. I, was involved in the council process of talking about this, and it's been good to see it applied in neighborhoods where it seems appropriate. We just want to ask a couple of questions of Mr. Hager, if I can, about community engagement. Are there any neighborhood associations, and can you just talk a little bit about how you can communicate with people?
Yeah, when I had the community meeting, we sent out a notice to everybody that was in that contextual overlay area. And then I have conversed with the O'Hickory Homeowners Association there as well. They have talked to about it, 2 or 3 meetings about it. The majority of them wanted. Now, you have a few real estate developers and real estate people that don't like it, which I can understand that. But the majority of people that I spoke to, once I've explained it to them, they're all in favor of this. Somebody called me the other day and said, this is like Mayberry, USA. When you go back into the village, it's a village. That's what it is. And my predecessor, Councilman Feller Brown, tried to put in a historical overlay back when he was councilman, and most people didn't want that because it was too restrictive. So with this, I said, well, the contextual overlay is the best way I can protect this area, and at the same time not be so restrictive on what they do. As far as the addition's concerned, I've told everybody, I said, you can still do your additions. It's just going to control the amount and the height. And if you drive through there, most of those properties, I think, that I see are the R5 and the R6, which are 5,000, 6,000 square foot lots. There's just not a lot of places to add on to those houses. But to keep the village as it is with the community center back there, we've got an ESP right now that's going right there to the south of Donaldson Avenue, which is right across from the community center. There's been an SP there for a long time, and the people that own that are getting ready to put 46 houses in there. They're going to be on lots about 4,500 square feet, and there'll be 46 houses in that area that used to be a shopping center, burnt down years and years ago. So that's really going to complement that area too, because the SP is required those houses to be built similar to the houses that are in the village, with the material that are in the village, and also the porches and the design. So it's going to complement the DuPont houses that are already there. So my position was, this is like the least restrictive way I could protect this area. And like I said, those houses are going up in value every day. People want to live back there. They like that ambiance. They like that village feel. They like the fact that they can walk to the community center. There's an MULA going in front of that as well. It's about 7,000 square feet. And I think some of the shops that were closed down there are starting to come back. And that's what people want. They want the walkability, but they also want to protect the character and the ambiance of that area.
Thank you. But one other question. Is there, I think this is great, and it seems like a really good application. I'm a little concerned about setting a precedent of shaving off overlays. I mean, do we have a precedent for that, or does that happen very often?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But it's just rezoning a property,
Right,
just like.
which you can do.
But I think Ms. Milligan is absolutely correct, that it couldn't be just one property.
Has to be done in discrete chunks. Okay, so yeah, I think that's important. I would hope the whole group would embrace that. I think that's really important.
Ms. Milligan, correct me if I'm wrong, but if somebody wants an addition that's over and above what is allowed, I think they can apply for a hardship and go to a BZA, I think, correct?
They could.
Yeah, under the terms permitted by the state statute and show you what your hardship was, then they could look at that.
They can do that. Okay, thank you. Good answers.
Okay, is there a motion? Move approval. Second. Motion second for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there a report from the Parks and Recreation?
No report, but we do have a lot of exciting events and things going on, and I'd be glad to get another speaker to come speak to you guys again.
You're keeping all these exciting events to yourself, then.
It's not a requirement. It's not a requirement.
No, executive committee, did the executive committee meet? It was a report last time.
The executive committee
We did meet. Well, we had a vote.
Yes, y'all elected another member to the executive board, Jessica Farr is now on the executive committee with you and the vice chair.
And that report was made then last time?
Well, just the election, yes. Actually, it was. Oddly, we did the vote and then we reported on the vote.
Yes, we did.
No other reports for today then? Perkins, anything from the courthouse that you'd like to report to us?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Any other comments from the commissioners?
Can you keep the next meeting?